Welcome, everyone. Today, we are going to listen to Acar's presentation. First, I will brief mention about her CV. Acar completed her primary, secondary, and high school education in Acar schools. Between 2014 and 2019, she completed her bachelor's degree from Faculty of Architecture at Acar University. In 2020, she started her master's degree at also Acar University and submitted her thesis in 2023. While studying on master's degree, she worked as an architect in an office in Izmir, and she's still working in the same office. Today, she will make a presentation about her master's thesis named Effects on Social Media on the Image of the City, Case of Izmir City Center. And again, welcome, Mine. We can start your presentation.
Hi, thank you for this introduction. And hi, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. Today, I will present to you about my thesis titled Effects of Social Media on the Image of the City, Case of Izmir City Centers. And this thesis contains 5 chapters, and it begins with an introduction part, and which mostly explains the aim of the study, and it continues with 3 main chapters, which will be explained in more detail in the following parts of this presentation. And the final part is the conclusion. Now I start explaining from the first chapter, which is introduction. The first chapter has 6 subtitles, and it begins with a problem definition. So, as a result of the booming digital technologies, the physical elements start finding their counterparts in the digital world frame. So it causes the representation of physical space through digital technologies, like information and communication technologies, such as social media tools. Therefore, the perception of the space, in this case, cityscape, is mediated through those platforms. And as a result, the city image, which is based on the perception of the city users, are transformed by ICTs and represented in the digital realm, which is user-oriented. Consequently, the image of the city should be rehandled in the digital era because the existing theory, which is based on the pioneer work of Kevin Lynch, the image of the city may be lacking in the information age. So the aim of this study is to understand how social media reflect the city image through visual and verbal data, which lead to reproduction of the city image and convergence of physical and digital space through locative media. Moreover, as the image is constructed through digital technologies, it's more dynamic and interchangeable now. Izmir's existing and new city centers are the geographical foci of the thesis in order to examine the digital image of the city. Centers were chosen because of their central location, easy access, more visitors, which will provide more data for this thesis. The research questions, as they are shown in this presentation, mostly try to understand the changes in the city image theory, which transform the existing layers. There are several limitations in this study, which are geographical limitation, selection of a single social media site, Instagram, which is the secondly most utilized social media platform in Turkey, time limitation, which covers May and July, and limitation of the questions of the online survey, which is applied to social media users. Instagram also has its own sub-limitations, such as private and public accounts using location interface while publishing a picture, and so on. This study is conducted on a location-based case study covering Konak and Bayraklı districts in Izmir. For analysis, they're adapted 2 main methods. First one is social media content analysis through Instagram, which is based on visuals, partly verbal. The second method was an online questionnaire containing 18 questions with 303 participants, which is aimed to support the findings of the content analysis in order to make inference how social media users perceive the city and their representation habits on social media. For further studies, the proposed layers of the city image can be validated for other cities and for other online social media platforms, or by a deeper verbal analysis. And as I mentioned before, this thesis contains 5 chapters, and it consists 3 main chapters. In the second chapter, it explains the meanings and components of the city. In the third chapter, it investigates the transformative power of ICTs in terms of city perception on social media. which leads subjective construction of the city image. And in the fourth chapter, the examination of the digital image of Izmir was examined. Now I will move on to the second chapter, which is called the structure of the image of the city, physical versus digital. So a city should keep its components together, both tangible and intangible, like buildings, inhabitants, as well as the cultural reflections. John Montgomery defines good cities as cities which has legible forms. Legibility enhances urban quality as well as embracing the sense of place. And Kevin Lynch, in his book, The Image of the City, introduces 5 components which constructs this legibility. Now I will shortly explain these components. These are edge, district, landmark, nodes, and paths. Paths offer the inhabitants to perceive the city while they are moving along an axis. Edges represent the boundaries that distinguish different regions, both visible and invisible powers. Districts are the places where the inhabitants feel they're entering a place from another place psychologically. And nodes are the focal points in a city that users can enter or transfer. And the final element is landmarks, which Lynch describes as defined physical objects. They allow the users have a reference point of a city, which increases imageability as well as orientation ability. However, the vitality is also an important element for city image. As John Montgomery asserts that whilst identity is an objective thing, what a place is actually like, image is a combination of this identity with how a place is perceived. And so, Lynch also asserts that city is not only a physical edifice itself, it's also being perceived by its residents. So therefore, the individuals are the agencies that construct this city image. Henry Lefebvre also supports this idea. He believes that place is produced by society and it is lived through images and symbols, which is also produced by people. Therefore, the image has subjective values. In summary, space is a physical output, which has a dynamic process according to the changes of human activities and relations. Richard Wilson also asserts that activity adds flexibility to a solid physical setting that constitutes an image value of a landmark. In the second section, how the image is produced was discussed. First of all, image production and image construction has different meanings. Image construction is more about the related elements and utilization of space. However, image production is a state of mind. For image production, there are 2 perspectives. One of them is related with categorization of cognitive elements like Lynch did, and the second one is related to experience of people and the symbolic meaning of a place. Lynch asserts that legibility is about creating a mental image that causes spatial cognition and creates a relationship between individual and his or her surroundings, which leads to imageability, which can be subjective. The advent of ICTs, the cognition of individuals are also affected due to the developing digital archives, digital maps, visual, like this, all this digital technologies. In the third section, representation of the city space in the digital realm was examined. Virtual world allows cognition through social media. It allows to interfere the perception of the city users. According to Yosafi and Dashpur, ICTs have a strong relationship with urban structure, which leads to the definition of new functions in urban spatial structure that affects the city image. Also, Al-Gamdi and Al-Hariri asserts that ICTs affect the concept of cognition and it influences the inhabitants. Through located media, which are location-based technologies and services, it bridges the physical and virtual realms and gives a preconceived idea about the space, which eventually affects the cognition. And as a negative impact of this booming network system, the city image became also a commodity in this consumption culture. Branding the city image creates a positive image for tourism activities, and social media became an important source for marketing. Municipalities also use social media in order to brandize the city by usual or written formats by announcing activities like festivals, which constitute the city image through activity-based features. However, those activities lead to consumption by being more open to be consumed and destroyed. And in the third chapter of the thesis, effects of social media on the production of the image of the city is reviewed. ICTs inevitably affect the perception of the city users as a consequence of its power on socio-physical changes. But the main question is how ICTs transform the image of the physical city. There are several researchers that investigate the mentioned question. Liu and others examine that there are incomplete parts that are left in the city image theory, such as subjective perception. Peng explains also that the information age differentiates the concept of city perception. Subjective perception became prominent in the information age. And as a consequence, city image has more subjective values in information age. Locative media is one of these effective tools that bridges between physical and virtual world. It reflects the experience of a certain space through images and videos. Therefore, it relates particular locations to a shared content, which also gives an idea about the subjective perception of the owner of the content. Therefore, the physicality of the city is not sufficient enough to describe the city image by itself. It's also related to social and cultural meanings which are integrated with city users' daily lives and their daily activities. The second section is based on the literature review that investigates the digital image of the city. According to the results, social media is a dependable source. Digital world represents public perception. Social media should be supported by interviews and subjective data, which appears on social media. Moreover, the review literature mostly uses similar methods. They mostly use verbal or visual content analysis supported by subjective data such as sketch maps, interviews, and so on. While visual platforms provide information more about the characteristics of space, the verbal data mostly provides information about the utilization of space and their daily activities. Also, the image created on digital world can evolve and change through the experiences, perceptions, comments over years, which can be defined as dynamic. Subjective representation give idea about the utilization, mobility patterns, experiences, which examines this authentic experience of the owner of this content. However, there is this problem of the accuracy in terms of representation, because social media allow users to manipulate the image through diverse filters, such as the Instagram filters. And Lefebvre asserts that world of images divert attention from real. It constitutes an abstract image. Therefore, social media mostly represent the dressed up reality of the owner of the image. And due to the booming utilization of social media and other ICT tools, a new publicity has emerged. So physical and digital space start feeding from each other, and social media became a public locale where people display their lives. It evolved as a social gathering area to communicate, chat, which Dana Boyd explained it as a network public. New technologies encourage people to participate in the new social media tools, which eventually built new social practices. Therefore, social media evolved as a form of architecture that generates occasions for social gathering. There are various thoughts about construction of metaverse, the cyberspace. However, physical space and digital space should always be considered together, which can be defined as hybrid space. And in the fourth chapter, images of Izmir city centers on Instagram through social media content analysis and a supportive online questionnaire. This thesis is conducted on a location-based case study covering Konak and Bayraklı districts, as I mentioned before. Instagram was chosen for the social media content analysis as it provides visual, verbal, and locational data at once. For the time limitation, May 2021 and July 2021 was selected because it refers to important temporal axis. May 2021 represents the time that the outdoor activities became to vibrate in the city, and July corresponds to the normalization period after a long closure due to COVID-19 pandemic. In this presentation, the first and second sections of the fourth chapter will be given together in order to explain the relationship between the character of the repeated image and the newly presented categorization. Firstly, repeatedly posted images were collected in order to understand the subjective patterns that is constructed in social media for this new city image categorization. The importance was given to the photos that reflect the images of the city in the background or show this city identity. In total, 241 images collected in May and 477 photos collected in July. On social media, there are images that evoke the identity of Izmir, such as Izmir International Fair, palm trees, clock tower, and those images are related with the component of landmark of linking categorization. However, they are not only pointed based, they are highlighting the city-specific entries. Therefore, the symbol category enlarges the meaning of landmarks. For instance, Bayraklı skyscrapers became a symbol of the modern face of Izmir, which leads to a significant point in terms of recognition of this certain area. The second pattern is landscape photos, which resonate the edge categorization in Lynchian sense. The attachment of symbols into a backbone creates a certain image that constructs this legibility. Most of these images show this silhouette photos, which are also important in branding and recognition. For example, Bayraklı silhouette was shared repeatedly as it describes a backbone that skyscrapers can attach. So it also emphasizes this Manhattanization of the specific area. And in the third pattern, it defines a categorization which is activity or object-based. It demonstrates objects and activities such as gevrek, boyol, fishing, drinking in cordon, which is specific to Izmir. Space adjusts itself with human activities. Events and certain activities have the ability to convert physical settings into flexible environments that create an image value of a landmark. It's also related with the memorization of city life. And specific point photos, which are repeatedly shared, which enhances this recognition of the specific point, is named as niche photos. This category highlights subjectivity since these niche places are selected by the social media users and increases popularity and legibility. To illustrate, the painting on the facade of a building or an entrance door of a house can have a value to share on Instagram, which can be recognized by others and shared repeatedly. Niche images are mostly used in relation to symbol or spine categories in their background. And the other category defines negative images, which is called adversity. This category reminds of certain dates in memory, which has a tragic event, such as the earthquake with magnitude 7.0 in Izmir, which is a tragic event. The shared images on Instagram, which are ruined buildings, are integrated with the identity of Izmir in some point. And there are also photos that demonstrate reverse images and conflicting concepts. These images mostly show this urban problem in Izmir. For instance, these images show slums and newly built skyscrapers, or like the historical part of the Izmir and newly part of the Izmir. So it's kind of basically showing these conflicting concepts in the city. And the percentage of shares among districts are seen in the slide. Most shared categories are symbol, spine, and niche for both of the districts, for Konak and Bayraklı. Moreover, while Konak posts mostly involves symbol categorization, Bayraklı is mostly related with its spine images. The reason can be that Bayraklı advertises itself with the skyscrapers, which are in relation with the coastline. Most of the images contain this spine visual. However, Konak has its own historical background, so it's more related to symbol category. Another thing that stands out is the stroke images are also occur in this coastline. So we may say that this stroke images are also in relation with this spine category. The frequency of hashtags that are used as attached to the shared content also give idea about the city and city perception. For both of the districts, locational information was given with this hashtag, such as City of Izmir, Izmir, Bayraklı, Konak. But more strikingly, there are lots of hashtags such as from my land, from my perspective, which shows this verbal expression of subjectivity and collectively produced city image. After those hashtags, the characteristics of districts were given. For Konak, history, nostalgia, clock tower, and they are mostly used after them. Palm, pigeon, tram, fishing, gevrek, daily life can be listed. It can be demonstrated that Konak is mostly related by its historic character and symbolic meaning. But for Bayraklı, there are hashtags such as skyscrapers, towers, architecture, structure, and this shows this developing side of this region. And more the newly created activities within this region also mentioned by this hashtag, such as paragliding, cycling, and so on. So from now on, the results of this online questionnaire will be given in this presentation. The questionnaire is applied in order to understand how the image of the city is perceived by social media users. The online questionnaire contains 18 questions and it is answered in total by 303 people. The questionnaire was spread through snowball sampling technique, and there are both yes and no questions and multiple choice questions within this questionnaire. Yes or no questions aim to understand social media utilization habits and interconnection with the physical space. According to the results, the users mostly use locational text, and they believe social media has the power in the recognition of city image. They also believe that verbal data is more important and reliable in comparison to visuals because visuals can be manipulated in social media. Moreover, they believe repetitive images on social media has the power to create this city image. Multiple choice questions try to understand the difference in the physical space and represented place on social media and choice of users to share content. Therefore, which category was mostly created on social media was investigated. According to the results, the users believe that mostly shared content on social media is Spain category, which contains the coastline. And for the identity of Izmir, mostly used images consisted of humanscapes and celebrations. Most of the users prefer to share content in cordon. Moreover, the majority believe that Konak Clock Tower directly shows the identity of Izmir, even though Bayraklı has a developing district. It's not fully integrated with the identity of Izmir yet. Finally, the newly presented categories were asked to the survey participants, and most of them answered the mostly repeated images are symbols, spine, and stroke. Even though there is slightly difference with the content results of this content analysis, they are mostly parallel with each other. And in summary, this study aims to reveal that how the image of the city can be reinterpreted in the digital world through Instagram. The questionnaire is simultaneously questioned if the city image created on social media are valid for the city users. Link categorization can be adapted and expanded for reading the digital image of the city. According to the repeating images, a new categorization was offered based on the subjective perception. Moreover, the pattern that is created on social media can adapt the ever-changing condition and perception of the city users, which can be described as dynamic in the information age. And the fifth chapter is the final part, which is the conclusion. This thesis elaborates on changes in the city image theory due to the booming utilization of social media, in this case, Instagram and its geofence feature. When looking at Bayraklı and Konak regions on social media, it's striking that repetitive images are posted. These repetitive visuals have inevitably shaped this city image, and this study suggests a new categorization logic, which respects to the findings of the finding of link and finding of this content analysis and this online questionnaire. Moreover, repetitive images on social media demonstrate the subjectivity of individuals on social media to build the image of the city. The posts shared by people being repeated on social media evoke a certain sense of cognition, and they begin to create a mental image. Moreover, daily activities of the city users continues to construct the city image, so the image is shaped by its agents. Therefore, this thesis demonstrates the subjective perception through the lens of social media. As a consequence, the image of the city is user-generated in the information age, and in summary, this study focuses Lincoln sense as a theoretical basis and adapts its logic into a new categorization in the digital age. So this was the end of my presentation, and thank you all for joining and listening. And if there is any question, I can answer.
Thank you, Mina, for your presentation. I think Begüm has a question.
Thank you for your presentation. Firstly, it was delightful. I have some questions about your methodology, actually. First one is, did you base your content analysis on the geotext or hashtag, or how did you choose that post? you search for those images?
I think we've lost your voice at some point, but as I understand, you are asking that how I decided to pick the images on social media in like what basis. Am I right?
Did you get my voice? Hear me? I guess not.
We can't get your voice fully, Begum.
It's
Okay,
coming, like it's really coming from deep, like inside.
Yes.
Okay, sometimes Zoom makes that thing. I will write my questions. Okay.
Okay. But let me explain a more detailed explanation for my method. So I decided to choose Konak and Bayraklı because for me, like Konak is the center of Izmir and it comes from like this historical background. But Bayraklı is it's really developing right now, and it's kind of became this like business center of Izmir, and like Izmir is enlarged from Konak to those parts, so it's kind of also this have this central point nowadays. So I decided to look at Bayraklı because it's also different from the urban fabric of Izmir, because it has its own Manhattanization effect. So it's kind of different from Konak or Karşıyaka. So I think it's logical to compare Bayraklı and Konak. So I decided to choose this two centers. And while I will search the Instagram for the images, I limit my keywords. I just write Konak or Bayraklı for this hashtag part in Instagram. And I look at in monthly basis or hatta weekly basis, and I try to find the images that show only the city or the city in the background. And I didn't look at the selfies or the personal images, but like it clearly shows the city, I archive the images. And at some point, I saw that these archives give me a pattern about the, I don't know, city image, shows the city image. So I started to categorize these images, and after I categorize, it shapes this. I don't know how to say, but it shapes the name of this categorization. Okay, it kind of resonates the H category in Lynchian sense, but it also enlarged this meaning from that point or from this point. So I decided to say, okay, when I add these layers, it kind of evolves something else in social media. So then I started to name this categorization, and I think you write it down your question.
For the first one, I guess I get my answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like, you mentioned you chosen participants for
I can read the question. For the
okay.
Next audience. You mentioned you chosen participants for questionnaire with snowball method. So can we assume there are maybe no correlation between the participants and the analyzed content shape?
Yeah, actually, I intend to make this questionnaire to see if there is this relation with the content sharers and the content, like the Instagram sharers and the people who lived in the city. But after all, the shared content also evolved the city as well, because it affects this perception of the mind. That's why I'm saying image production, because it's, as I mentioned, it's a state of mind. So it's kind of also people perceive the city through social media. So it eventually became a relationship between this content and the participants of the questionnaire. So even though they are not representing the same thing, at the end, it's more giving this same path, I guess. I don't know if I answered right.
Yes, thank you.
The questionnaire was more like for the perceiver, maybe we can say that basically. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think so. So yeah, the questionnaire is representing the perceiver of the city. I think that's right.
Are there any questions? No questions? I think no, Miguel. Thank you for your inspiring presentation.
Thank you for participating in me.
And so see you later. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.